Happy hump day, everybody. Welcome to the first and probably only ever installment of Paddle Wheeler Wednesday. This video is gonna seem like odd timing because I'm actually ahead of schedule on Saturday uploads right now, which is a beautiful luxury I don't get to enjoy very often. We're actually in Dawson City, Yukon. There's a neat piece of history here that I want to share with you. I filmed it once before and interviewed the curator at the museum, so I'll link that video down in the description below. But there's lots of new folks on the channel, so we got to go over and take a look at the Paddle Wheeler graveyard. If we were to rewind time 120 years, this right here would be an active shipyard. It is now the Paddle Wheeler graveyard, and it's home to 7 of these great big old paddle wheelers that have been sitting here deteriorating for the better part of 100 years, some of them even more. As we walk around, I'd love to teach you a little bit of North America history and the rise and fall of the paddle wheeler. If we were to go back to a time where this was British North America and Russian America before Canada and Alaska, there was not much happening out here, just a whole lot of land. Of course, the First Nations have been here for thousands of years, and there was the fur trade, but that's basically just small settlements and people living off the land. And then, of course, came the late 1800s and the discovery of gold, and these areas turned into cities basically overnight, and that was made possible because of the paddle wheeler. These ships could bring people and large quantities of goods up the river systems from the ocean, and that made these towns sustainable. Well, like all boom and bust, the gold dried up and the people left, and the need for these great big paddle wheelers started to decline. Like anything, these paddle wheelers were owned by companies, and companies need to make money. By the 1920s, the expansion of Yukon and Alaska was long over, and there was basically just a small handful of these things still running. They started pulling them up here in the early 1900s and essentially retiring them. And then, of course, came the 1940s and World War II and the Alaska Highway, which was the first time in history where the North was vehicle accessible, and that brought the retirement and extinction of the paddle wheeler. Look at that. The condition is just amazing. This actually looks like it was filled with something. That one maybe just painted. I believe I came and did the previous video 2 years ago, and things look basically the same, which is nice to see, but these old ships will never see any amount of restoration. Just too far gone. But it's still really cool to come out here, take a look at the way things were built back in the day, and a lot of it is quite impressive. And it's neat to see all this old iron, the big steam engines and boilers up there. We'll climb up for a bit of a closer look here shortly. I think this one might be the oldest, and by the time you get to the front of it, you can barely recognize that it's even a boat. So you can see the hull going down like that, and then these are walls that have collapsed and fallen down. Look at that old wall, tongue and groove. Very cool. all these windows. Would have been a beautiful ship back in the day. Something that really fascinates me with this old stuff is intricacies in woodwork. You see it a lot more on boats. I don't know if that's a strength thing or just pride from the builder, because everything was built with such haste back in the day. You wouldn't think they'd take the time to make a nice rounded piece like that, but this was, of course, transportation for a lot of people, but quite a treat for many of the people that rode these boats. So to have it a little bit luxurious, probably a nice selling feature. Wow, so this gives you a great idea of the scale. You can see the side, I'm just at the bow here, port side over there, starboard going this way, and this would have been your first deck right there. You can see same with that first deck, and then second one would have had 3 and actually 4 on this one, just probably the pilot house on top. Very cool. Huge big ships. I believe these final two here, you can see they're the most intact still. I think this is the Seattle number 3, and then Julia B in behind it there. The final 2 ships to go into retirement pulled up on the shore here in the paddlewheeler graveyard. And look at the size of that boiler. Absolutely massive. Tell you a pretty neat fact about this paddlewheeler right here. Massive beehive right in there. Managed to escape without getting stung, but it was a pretty close call. Let's see about getting up into this bad boy. Everyone that likes exploring old places or abandoned places has their favorite part about it. For me, it's always been stairs and floors. A really worn out floor. You can just imagine the amount of people that walked on this thing. Amazing. That paint is still in great condition on the inside. Then you got this big steam engine right here. And there would have been one on either side. And that's what actually powered the wheel at the back. They would have been timed opposite from each other. So this one would stroke, and then this one back and forth. We'll get a better look at that on the one further down. I did a pretty extensive walkthrough of all these boats on my first visit. I don't want a chance of wrecking anything, so I'm not going to walk around too much more, but I do want to take a closer look at the stern wheel on this thing. And this is the only one that has any amount of this stern wheel left. I want to try and get up there. This is the arm coming directly off of that big steam engine. It attaches to this and it would throw it backwards. They would spin like this. Okie dokie, welcome to the open deck. I'm going to try my absolute best not to get tetanus up here. Totally buried underneath the rubble, but there's one steam engine. Over here, this one is far more exposed, so we'll take a closer look. Is the other steam engine. Very cool. This is neat. This one's actually completely still attached. All the way, well, with the exception, I guess it's not attached right to the end of the steam engine anymore. Looking a little bit closer, these are actually not opposite at all. They're only just off time from each other. This one's 45 degrees up, that one's 45 degrees down. There's all kinds of videos online that teach you about how a steam engine works. This is pretty much just the cylinder and the piston left. All the workings on top have been taken for something. Probably upgrades or fixes to one of these later vessels. As far as I know, there's never been any demolition to these ships. It's crazy to think that over the last 100 years, these have slowly just started falling down. Barely make them out anymore. But there's two more further down. Don't remember exactly where, but I don't think it should be a huge challenge to find them. And I think they might actually be barges, not paddle wheelers. But we'll go take a look. I remember last time I found it, it was a janky looking trail like this. Yeah, sure enough, I can see them. Because the main paddle wheelers, the Seattle number 3, you can see sticking out when you're on the ferry coming across Yukon River. But here we are. I don't remember it looking like this, so maybe there's more than just the two. Look at this boiler. 3 in a row. That's pretty cool. Forgot that was there. And I like this windlass. Hyde Windlass Co. That's pretty cool. That's out of Maine. They're Bath Ironworks now. Still in operation. Well, the way they put these in here obviously was back to front. I'm surprised to see this has deteriorated so much. Barely recognizable. And then the further in we get, they seem to be getting into better condition. But if I remember correctly, this one on the far end is actually an iron hull. Going for the gap without falling through. Made it. I hope everyone enjoys this visit to the paddle wheeler graveyard, because I think it's going to be the last, at least the last time walking around on here. Awfully sketchy going across that one. But funny enough, this is the only iron hull of all of them. This floor, you can see it's got all those posts sticking out. They hold the floor, and then they put these wooden plugs in over top. It's a good look at some that have fallen out, and then some that are actually still in there. It's a little bit too rotten for me to be excited about walking around on it, but I gotta get back here, take a look at that. You can see the one steam engine there. When I first looked back here, I thought this was some type of crane coming off the side of this one, but it's the back side of that other boat beside it. And I'm really not sure what purpose that served. Been standing up here trying to figure out these cranes. I think I have a baseline understanding. They are actually rudders. You can see a pivot point right there on all 3 of them. And then that peg sticking up on all 3, I'm guessing they would have been attached. And then this longer one probably would have controlled the side to side. And then that peg, and then the one has fallen off there, would have attached the 3 of them. So I don't know if all paddle wheelers had a rudder like that, or if this was maybe something that was towed. Not entirely sure, but that is in fact a rudder system. Haven't seen anything even similar on any of these other ones, but I am ready to get back and get off of this crusty old ship. There's this one hole in the decking right here. Had some treasures in it. There is just a ring and a rusty old nail. Not too much of interest, but there was two little triangles of, well, I thought copper at first, but you would have think they'd have oxidized more over the years. I'm not sure what these are made out of. Maybe bronze. But there they were, sitting in there. No idea what they're for. I just hate walking on this. I've seen a couple of these holes. There's another one right there. And I thought, well, something fit in that hole at some point in time. No idea what it could have been. And then I see this one. It's got a plug in it. Now, why would they cut a hole in that board just to plug it? Well, I may have figured it out. You can see right here, there's another layer of flooring. I think this was like a primary deck and then flooring on top. Not entirely sure, but you can see this one is actually locked in. So I'm wondering if that's what those holes were for. They also have it nailed, but yeah, the rest of that top layer of flooring is gone, so can't compare it to anything else. One more little point of interest. The deck on this iron hull ship actually extends out several feet beyond the hull underneath. Not entirely sure what purpose that would serve. Nevertheless, it's pretty neat, and I think it's time for me to make my way off of these rotten old ships and back to camp. Thanks for watching, everybody.